Hi, Eric.
Hey, what's up?
Well, everything's up with you, not with me.
There's nothing up. I mean, it's all good.
Yes, we're here together. Um, Eric is we're pulling off this recording in the midst of a very busy time for Eric.
Mm.
And as a matter of fact, he just watched like literally 10 minutes ago, he finished watching it. The
I'm
movie,
fresh. I'm fresh
you are
on
so fresh.
my takes for it.
You're so fresh. Welcome to, I think what is it, episode 29? I think it might be episode 29
Um, yeah,
of the
yeah.
Mom and Eric podcast. Woo!
hmm
Okay, so today we are going to talk about two movies by Wim Wenders. Wim Wenders. I always feel like I'm going to say that wrong. And I think that I have a resistance to saying Wim Wenders, which is spelled Wim Wenders, because everybody always pronounces my last name, Jung. They always give it the German pronunciation. I always, even Alexa always says Minna Jung. And it's very annoying. But I believe the correct pronunciation is Wim Wenders.
Vim vendors? Oh,
Wim
okay. I was
Wenders.
saying Wim Wenders this whole time.
No, it's Wim Wenders. He's
Uh,
German.
got it.
Yes. So anyway, just a renowned filmmaker. Today we're going to talk about two of his films, one from very long ago, which is called Paris, Texas. And then the other one is called Perfect Days, which is the more recent one. I think it was made last year. Annie, daughter, sister, Annie has really been going through a cinephile phase. So she's been watching a lot more movies, just random movies. And she actually recommended that we watch this movie, Perfect Days. Normally, this family has a really hard time agreeing on movies that overlap in terms of our tastes. But I actually watched it first. I watched it about a month ago, and I really, really loved it. And the tone and just the whole vibe of that movie, Perfect Days, reminded me so much of just other movies that I love. I did a little bit of digging and then I realized it was a Wim Wenders movie. And then I remembered that he had also made Paris, Texas, which I had actually seen, I think, close to when it came out. So it came out in 1984, and I believe I watched it during my college year. So it was not many years after it came out. And I just remember loving that movie so much, Paris, Texas. So anyway, I suggested this to Eric, and then Eric watched. He's been just very, very busy. He's even been working this weekend, so he's been working like crazy. But in the midst of all of his working and in the midst of all of his watching movies and watching TV shows with his friends, he managed to watch Paris, Texas, and then he just watched Perfect Days. So that is the background. What do you want to talk about first? Actually, which movie do you want to talk about first?
We could go chronologically. I think, Paris, Texas, has been a movie that's been mentioned to me as being a really perfect movie
Yeah,
by a lot of people,
interesting.
like a lot of cinephiles and a lot of people who love filmmaking. Um,
It's in a
and
lot of the letterbox reviews too. Like
yeah,
this is a perfect movie.
yeah, it pops up all the time. And I had not heard, I didn't know a single thing about it until we press play, which is the way I prefer. Same with Perfect Days. And I enjoyed it a
Yeah.
lot.
Do you want me to do the plot synopsis?
Yes.
Yes. Well, plot synopses are really easy when it comes to Vin vendors because it's not a lot of story, but somehow I feel like one thing his movies really are so good at is that they make the most out of very little story. Do you know what I mean? So without getting heavy-handed about it or without getting portentous about it, they just somehow manage to wring a lot of emotion. And actually, Annie went and saw Paris, Texas after I told her that it was also a Vin Vendors movie. And she said, I just don't know how he manages to get so much emotion out of so little
Yeah.
dialogue, you
Yeah.
know? So Paris, Texas is about a guy. At first, he's just this unknown guy who's trudging on some type of quest in the middle of the Texas desert or the middle of the Southwest. He's played by Harry Dean Stanton, who's an iconic actor. He's so iconic. And
He
I don't
is.
know if you remember him, but he's the one who, Harry Dean Stanton is the guy he was playing the janitor when the Hulk crashes through. And he's like,
Oh my
that
God.
is like, so that's Harry Dean
Dude,
Stanton.
that is him.
Yes, that is it. Yeah. So anyway,
Oh my God, that's crazy.
so you see these shots of Harry Dean Stanton walking through the desert, and then slowly, little by little, you find out who he is. So he's eventually like rescued from his current fugue state from his brother, who's played by Dean Stockwell, another just iconic actor. And if you like the actor who played his brother, Dean Stockwell, you have to see Married to the Mob because it is just such an unbelievable role. He's such an unbelievable actor. Anyway, so he's picked up by his brother. And then his brother, he seems to be suffering some form of amnesia. And then you find out about his backstory little by little. And then you find out that his brother, he's been lost for several years or missing, and his brother took in his son. And then you find out that this is really just a quest, a personal quest to reconnect with both his son, but also with with the mother of his son, his ex-wife. And so that's what the movie is about. And it's again not very much story, but just an extraordinary amount of emotion and beauty conveyed in this film. So I know you're dying to talk about the Cowboy Bebop.
Oh,
So,
that can wait. I mean,
are you sure?
yeah, of
All
course.
right. Well, first of all, talk about what you thought of the movie.
That's not the only thing. That's not the only thoughts I had about the movie. It's just
You
like
were overcome by the
no,
Cowboy
it was
Bebop.
my most exciting realization, which is fun. But I
Yeah.
mean, on its own merit, it's obviously just a really great film.
Yeah.
Um, I, I mean,
So what did you like about it?
I will just regurgitate what I wrote in my review without the Cowboy Bebop stuff. But
It's all Cowboy Bebop stuff.
no, it wasn't. The phrase I would use, right, is deceptively simple. Like
Yes.
characters that seem very um like simple when you describe them and what you know about them, but when you actually try to understand them on a more a deeper and like a more human level, it gets more complex.
Yeah.
And I mean, particularly with Paris, Texas, it was really great because you just don't know anything about the main character until later, and what you're left with is just like how he interacts with people.
Yes.
Um,
Exactly.
yeah, like
So much meaning in this
yeah,
simple
his
interaction.
demeanor is very disarming and fragile. Like it's
Yes.
clear he's been through something really profound and terrible.
Yeah.
Um, but he doesn't. He tries not to let that invade other people's lives.
Yes.
But he acknowledges when it does, like with his family and
Right.
with his son and with his brother. But this is not anything that's like talked at you about.
No.
It's completely just shown through their performances.
Yes, it's incredible.
Yeah.
It's actually incredible how much the performances convey and how the simplest of interactions. People always call out the scene where he goes to pick up his son. The first time he goes to pick up his son from school, his son ignores him. And then the second time when he picks him up and tells him that he's going away, that scene where they're mirroring each other on that
Yeah.
people call that scene out and
That
and
was the
so
best scene
yeah,
for
that
me.
was the best scene. So I loved this film so much when I first saw it. I just thought it was beautiful. Like I just remember thinking, how can this be so beautiful? Because it's such a tragedy. Like the story is so sad, you know.
Yeah.
There's so much sadness and there's so much loss, and you can feel like there's grief lurking beneath the surface. And yet, when you watch this movie, you feel somehow I feel, I don't feel depressed in the slightest. Like I don't feel depressed and I don't even feel like anxious about what's going to happen. How can I say this? That Paris, Texas instilled in me and still does a patience to just find out what is going on, but also a patience to let people realize their own stories in their own time.
Yeah.
So his brother at first keeps on, and this is mirrored in his brother's character because his brother's character keeps on asking him, "Where have you been? What's going on? What happened to you? What's going on?" And then after a while, he just lets go. Like he just,
Yeah.
because Harry Dean Stanton actually can't, Travis, I think, Travis can't answer these questions because he's actually coming out of some really deeply troubled, lost state, and he's slowly returning. He's like realizing slowly, wait, what am I doing? Oh, wait, this is my son. Okay, so it's like he's showing this really beautifully. And I think that in real life, and particularly nowadays, I think that there is this drive towards instant gratification where
Yeah.
everything's captured in like a TikTok video you know what I mean? Like everything on social media, you have to have a confessional, you have to have like a recap or a part 6 or a part 7 or an update. Like everybody in the comments is always saying, when are you going to come back with the update, you know? And so I think that everything is just sort of always urging you to find out the resolution or find out what happened
Yeah.
next, you know? And yet this that form of storytelling is much more contemplative,
Yeah.
much more beautifully done. And then it's sort of devastating when it does happen at the end, when you find out the full story at the
Yeah.
end, you know? So the full story when he tells the story at the end is devastating.
Yeah. This subject that like most a lot of people, people watching the movie are waiting for is what happened to him, right? Like that's
Yes.
like what
Yeah.
everybody wants to know. And there's
And
like
you're given clues like little bits
yeah,
here and there.
exactly. That's what I
Yeah.
was like it would be one thing if you were given absolutely nothing. Like it would have been a creative choice to have him just not be able to speak.
Yes.
I think that's like very easy to like want to do because
Yeah.
like he can't speak and that's so deep like
Yeah,
because
yeah,
of what he
yeah.
went through.
Yeah.
But he did speak like eventually in the movie and whatever we were expecting was not what we got because he was just so soft. He was like shrunken,
He was so yes. Yeah, he was
Um
diminished.
yeah.
Yeah, he was a diminished
Yeah,
version of his
and
former
so
self.
whatever we were maybe theorizing of like how he got there, why he's like wearing what he's
Yeah, yeah,
wearing,
yeah.
and all that stuff, like all that goes out the window because what's in front of us is just this like broken
Person.
person. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. Broken person. And then you think, okay, if he's broken, is there gonna be some type of redemption? And it's not a redemption. It's more of a realization. It's like a self-actualization.
Yeah.
Like
Well,
I can now, which by the way is so powerful. I can now share my story.
mhm,
And I now have all the pieces of the story. And I'm going to tell you exactly what the story, you know what I mean? Like
yeah.
both in the scene with his wife, played by Nastasia Kinski, and then also in the final letter, which was just so beautifully done.
Yeah.
So I can't recommend this movie. I will confess, though, that I did find it slower the second time. Like I found
Yeah.
it slower. And the other movie, Perfect Days, I did not find slow at all, like one little bit. So it's weird to me because the pacing in both of them is almost identical, and the information reveals are almost as titrated as they
Yeah.
are. They're identical. And
Yeah.
so, but Paris, Texas is 2.5 hours long, and Perfect Days is, I think, 1 hour and 45 minutes long. And so I don't know what the difference is. I actually think that it has to do with the subject matter of Perfect Days resonating with me more, and I'll get to that in a second. But you talked about a little bit about how you were checking the
Yeah. That
time.
I was just about to say like both movies I was checking like all right how much longer does this have but not in a negative way it just meant it was kind of testing my patience like
Yes.
because the subject matter of both movies were just kind of very deep themes
Yeah.
um that it's very easy to shy away from and to want to just watch something that's easy.
Yeah.
My favorite stuff is stuff that's just the easiest shit to watch,
Yeah.
like and it's quick and
For
simple.
me,
That's
it's like The
yeah,
Equalizer
I mean
or John Wick.
that's it's why I love Cowboy Bebop because it takes the elements from, this director and then kind of makes it into bite-sized like 20-minute episodes
Right.
and this like short series, right?
All right.
But
So
like
let's do a little exposition on Cowboy Bebop. I really think that
we don't
let's do
need
it. No,
to.
let's do it.
Okay,
So,
I
because
would
I
love to
actually
do
want to talk
that.
about it a little bit.
Okay.
Because Eric said that he was startled that he was startled by how similar Paris, Texas was to Cowboy Bebop. So just to explain, Cowboy Bebop do you call it anime or is it
Yes,
animation?
it's an
Oh,
anime.
it's an anime series. There's only one season of it.
26 episodes.
26 episodes, one season, and it's
90s.
about it's kind of a space western theme. And so it's about a sort of a ragtag bunch, and at the center is his name actually Cowboy Bebop?
No. Spike.
Spike. And then I don't remember
This
this.
ship is called Bebop.
Okay.
And Cowboy Bebop is just a funny title.
Yeah. So anyway, Spike is a central character, very moody, very brooding, who just sort of drifts through space. And then he's got this backstory, and there's a lot of like tragedy in the backstory. And he's also looking for his lost love, correct?
Yeah.
Yeah, and so I don't watch all of the animes that Eric is a huge fan of. Like Attack on Titan, I just find the concept really disgusting and gory.
Mm.
Eric really made it a more direct request and asked me to watch Cowboy Bebop. And then I thought that Cowboy Bebop was one of the most beautifully artistic, visually rendered animes I've ever seen. The moody angstiness of it all, which is very similar in atmosphere to Paris, Texas. It didn't work as well for me in Cowboy Bebop, but I really appreciated the artistry and I appreciated the music. The music was fabulous. So in both of them, like in both Paris, Texas and Cowboy Bebop, the music really sets the tone.
Hmm.
It's like really sort of jazzy, or and this it's just it matches it perfectly.
Yeah.
So when you were watching Paris, Texas, you had this aha moment for Cowboy Bebop, and what was that? You
Well, it was just because I saw this sign. It was so obscure and off to the side of just one shot.
in
And
Paris,
I
Texas.
yeah, and I don't even know how. I mean, I guess it was probably clear enough, but I read exactly what was on it, and it said Western World Track Development like 4 7 something or
Yeah,
whatever.
yeah.
And I recognize that exact sign because there's a episode in Cowboy Bebop where they're on I think they land on Earth or Mars. And there's just like a desert, and then there's just this sign that says exactly that.
Oh,
And
really?
well,
It's identical.
oh, it's like yeah,
Oh,
I
okay.
could pull up the
So it's
image,
a
but
complete call out.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And
Okay.
that's exactly why it hit me was because it was so because in the show too in that episode,
Yeah. That's crazy though,
like
that detail that you notice that detail.
exactly, isn't it?
I think that's crazy.
Yeah.
I mean, who would notice the sign?
But I
That's so
might
well.
not have noticed it,
That's what they
but
call an Easter egg, I think.
I might not have noticed if the stylistic similarities weren't there. You know, like the twangs and the music
Yes.
and the characters and um just
And
the
this
overall themes.
mysterious loner looking for his lost love.
Yeah.
Yes.
In the episode, I think it was so memorable because there's just a sequence where they're like crash landing their ship. And in the midst of this chaotic, like, oh, lots of sounds going off, like all of a sudden it just because they're entering the atmosphere, all of a sudden it just cuts to this sign and it's completely quiet and like empty desert, and
Yeah.
you just have to read the sign, but in the background you see like a star, like the ship like coming down.
Oh, interesting.
But that's why it was so memorable.
Yeah.
And then when I saw it in this, I was like, whoa. But that's like really cool.
And then you found out that the director was a huge fan of
Yeah, yeah, I saw some on some Reddit posts that he's a
he's watching
but
some Reddit
it
post.
he has to be because the similarities are there, like I said, but also like that's just like that's such a respectful nod to somebody or an artist, you know, you respect or probably um gained a lot of your influence from.
Yeah, that's such an interesting, successful translation then, because first you have Paris, Texas in 1984, then you have Cowboy Bebop, which renders a lot of the same themes and look in anime form. But Cowboy Bebop did not do I mean, some people liked it, but we tried live action a few years ago on Netflix, and I watched one episode and found it kind of unwatchable,
Yeah.
actually. So it was
Yeah.
interesting. I just thought that the mood I don't think you can be too literal when you do these homages. Like when you do an homage to a director that you really respect. I've said this many times about Alfonso Cuarón. You cannot like when he adapted The Little Princess, which is one of my favorite children's books. You can't you can't do a literal translation of something. You have to bring your own eye and vision to it.
Hmm.
But sometimes the homage just feels so respectful and beautifully done, like with Cowboy Bebop to Paris, Texas. And sometimes it feels like, what the
Yeah.
like all
There's
these
a different
Disney live action remakes, for example.
there's a difference between borrowing like techniques
Yes,
and combining them with your own ideas versus like trying to emulate something like
correct.
perfectly
Exactly. Or an exact like
or
remake.
measure up to something. You
Yes.
know, like that should never be the goal of a piece of art. It should be to make something that is new and exciting
Yes.
for you as an artist.
Yeah. So Eric actually said that he would like Paris, Texas to be divided into episodes
Yeah.
the way that,
Well,
which is so
no, that's
interesting.
not what I said. That's not what I said. I just said that the way I prefer to take in that sort of story is in small bites, in
Yes.
little episodes, you
It's
know?
funny because if I cannot imagine Paris, Texas broken up into bits, only because
And I can't either. I'm just
like,
saying.
everything would have been like for me, like a series of ink blots, like
Yeah.
Rorschach ink blots, it's like a series of impressions. So for me, to me, watching a movie like Paris, Texas is exactly like being in a lazy river or in a place where you're like floating along with the current and you're just sort of seeing where the river is going to take you, and then at the end and you find out, oh my gosh, it's kind of devastating. And that scene
Yeah.
where they're talking to each other in the peep show booth is really devastating. It's
Yeah.
really, really devastating. And then the last thing I'll say before we move on to Perfect Days, and there's some backstory with that movie. But the last thing I'll say is that I thought all the performances in Paris, Texas were extraordinary, but I in particular was blown away by that kid.
Yeah.
I was
Yeah.
blown
Me
away
too.
by that kid. And so the kid has the child, I don't remember his name, but the little boy who played his son had a stillness about him. Like he did what he captured so perfectly. Can't believe that a kid that age can act like this.
Yeah.
He had this way of like hanging back and just watchfulness.
Yeah.
Like I don't know who you are, I don't trust you. And this is the home that I've known. But little by little, as his memory was jogged when they showed the home movie with his mother and parents, you could see like the kid starting to slowly accept him and then say, "No, I'm in it with you. I'm in this adventure. I'm on this quest with you." And that moment where he joins, he was like, "I want to come with you, to find mom,"
Yeah.
was just it was just so beautifully done in little by little. Like the titration of the vendors is unbelievable
Hmm.
in terms of how he slowly unfolds the story. So
Yeah.
I just thought it was
I
extraordinary.
especially the moments where he's just being just a pure kid.
Yes.
When
Yes.
he's playing with like the Star Wars toys,
Yes.
that I just refuse to believe that that was faked. I mean, like they probably just told him like, all right, play with these toys,
Yeah.
or like I don't because it just sounds so real. My boss's kid has been coming into the office
Yeah.
sometimes, and like I watch him just like do like imaginary stuff, and
Yeah.
I cringe because I definitely did that. But also
It
like
was
it's
wonderful when he
just
did it.
yeah, but it's just so kids' imagination seems so boundless at that age,
Yes.
and like seeing that so purely captured in that kid
Yes.
was so crazy.
Right. And he exists in this beautiful, like, transitional space between imagination and reality.
Yeah,
So he knows now that Travis is his father, and he knows that they're going on a quest to find his mother. He's also leaving behind what he became his family,
yeah,
And so, how can I say this? But he exists so beautifully in the present, is what I'm
yeah.
trying to
He
say.
like
He's just a great actor.
he also seemingly had just like the most understandable kind of complicated feelings about his dad coming
Yes,
back. Like
yes.
he was like, "Oh, that's my dad,"
I know. And
like
the
to
first
his
time,
friend, and his
yeah,
friend was like, "Who the fuck is
yeah,
that?"
I know. It was like
But
he was embarrassed.
but he was also laughing too. He was like, "Yeah,
Yeah,
I know, it's funny."
I know.
Like for a kid that age to display that sort of understanding.
Yeah.
I mean, I just wonder like if they how they directed him because or how Vin Vendors
Yes,
directed him
directed him.
because do they say like, okay, this is what's happening, this is what you're gonna do, or
Right.
do they just say like, all right, here's what you need to say, like
Yeah, I
go
don't
go for it?
know. I don't know. But despite the fact that the dialogue is by any measure sparse, when the dialogue hits, it is so powerful. And it's so, so powerful. So
Yeah,
when his mother says, I didn't want to consume him, with my own, and I didn't want to I didn't want to consume him with my own unhappiness,
yeah, yeah,
and so, and then also, just the exchanges between him and Travis, like when he calls home, and then Travis was like, "Yeah, they were pretty upset, huh?" And he was like, "Yeah, they were kind of
Mhm.
upset." Like just everything was just done
Yeah,
really just amazingly, and yeah,
yeah.
it was incredible.
And he clearly remembered them. And but what if he didn't? Then he at least like was able to create this association when he watched that video.
Yeah,
And now it was real, and now it was something he really cared about. And anything, obviously he doesn't understand the really really horrible things that happen,
right,
beforehand. But to him that doesn't matter.
right.
And I'm sure like if you were to learn, it wouldn't matter as much.
Yes. Yeah.
Um,
So that is Paris, Texas. And you gave it 4.5 stars?
yeah.
I think I gave it 4.5 stars too. I might have given it, no, I think
No,
I
you
gave
gave
it
it
four
four
and
and
a
a half.
half.
Yeah.
Okay. But anyway, loved it, loved it. And it's so interesting seeing it now with decades in between my first seeing and then seeing it again. So let's move on to Perfect Days. And Perfect Days is Wim Wenders' most recent movie. And so I Absolutely. I will get to how we felt about this, but I just have to say up front, I loved Perfect Days so, so much. And it is a movie that hit me. It was the right movie at this particular time in life and how I'm feeling about life in general and about all the shit show that's going on in our country. And it came as this perfect little oasis of story and understanding. And so Perfect Days is a movie about a man in Tokyo who cleans toilets. And it's just about his life. That's it. It's about his life. You know, he's someone who just follows his routine day by day, the same routine. He listens to really classic music, really great music as he's driving around in his little van between his different toilet assignments. And so that's what the movie's about. But just the backstory of this. Wim Wenders has a history of doing films in Japan. He did a famous documentary of a really, really well-known fashion designer, like a revolutionary fashion designer, Yamamoto. And so Japan, some sort of cultural ministry or whatever, they invited him they had just installed 17 public toilets as part of an art installation. So the challenge was to make these public toilets as beautiful, and they commissioned it from these well-known artists. And so they wanted him to make a documentary, tiny, tiny little budget, right? And they wanted him to shoot it in like 16 days or 17 days. And Wim Wenders said, I can make, he saw pictures of the toilets and he said, I think that this documentary would be so much better
As a movie,
as a feature film. And I think that I can think of a
a
story.
documentary would be kind of boring.
What?
A documentary would be kind of boring
Yeah,
if
I
it
think
was
they just
so.
wanted to talk about how beautiful those toilets were. The toilets are insanely beautiful. Like
Yeah,
when you see these toilets, these public toilets, you're thinking, why is America so screwed up?
yeah.
Like, but people have this reaction when they go to other countries and they see their trains and they see their public toilets and they're like, what is wrong with us? Like,
Buses.
literally,
Yeah.
what is wrong with us? You know? And so, when you see these public toilets, if you watch this movie, you're like, oh my God. And they're even though they're dirty, like he has to clean them, they're still not as dirty and disgusting as our toilets are in this country. So
Well,
anyway,
that's also production design.
so Wim Wenders, persuaded them to do a feature film, and he paired up with a Japanese writer. His name is escaping me at the moment, and he also promised them that it could be shot in the same budget and time that the documentary was
That's
planned for.
insane.
So they shot that film, which actually, not a lot happens in the film, so it's actually easy to understand. But they must have had to be so disciplined in terms of setting up shots, boom, 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 and then they got this incredible actor. He's wonderful. He's a really, really wonderful actor to play the part of I don't remember his name now. Hi, Eric.
Hey,
We have a continuity problem.
yeah, unfortunately had to
We are
step out and pause the recording and then didn't continue after a long while. So
yes,
kind of trying to fill in the space here.
for the maybe one random person out there who's still watching our podcast, you may notice that we have different hairstyles than we
Yep.
did in the first half, and we are wearing different clothes, and we are also not together. There are all these clues that this is a different time and day.
Yeah.
Okay, so today we are gathered to
Well,
re-record.
it's okay. You can, I
Just
mean,
go right into it.
yeah, you could just, I mean, because this will be right in the middle of the episode. So you had just in the context, we had just talked about Paris, Texas, and how
Yes,
great that movie was, and then
yes,
you had just given us a beautiful intro on Perfect Days
yes.
um for
Well, thanks. I
the
mean,
recording
thanks.
to
Not
just let
yes,
you know.
thanks.
Yeah. So Perfect Days.
Do you want?
What did you want to start with?
I trust you that my synopsis was beautiful. All right, we'll just launch right into it.
Yes.
So, but anyway, since that time that we were so distracted and missed our recording last time, did not start recording again. So I think that we wanted to actually do Perfect Days some justice. And actually, I had this thought already before you had listened to what we had captured. Because the more I thought about it, the more I don't know, the more I think about that movie, the more I love it,
Yeah, me
actually.
too.
And then in between also you saw the movie again. So
Yeah.
you saw it last weekend for the first time with Dad. Dad said that he was also thinking about rewatching the movie because he was just thinking about it a lot and he wanted to watch it. He felt it was important for some reason to see that movie at night.
Yeah,
So anyway, but you saw it again. You watched it with your housemates. And I don't know if you noticed anything, but why don't we actually just start with let's start with we've already been really clear. We loved Paris, Texas. We think that Wim Wenders has a lot of really amazing sort of distinctive characteristics that mark him as a director and as a filmmaker. And in particular, I will talk about this more, but I just love how he slows down the pace of life, to the point where you actually are able to notice and appreciate things. And I think that I notice that even more nowadays, because nowadays I feel like living in just today's society and with everything being so online, I feel constantly pelted by pay attention to this. You gotta look at this. And it's like and my attention span keeps on getting trained, as I get more and more addicted to social media. I have to constantly step away from Facebook and especially TikTok and Instagram just so that I can train myself how to focus again. And I actually feel that that's a huge part. So what did you love so much about Perfect Days, or what did you like about Perfect Days? I don't want to assume that you loved it.
I really loved it. I think it's funny that this movie has kind of stuck with me a bit more than Paris, Texas, because Paris, Texas is Vin Vendors' most acclaimed movie, probably.
Yeah, no
Um,
Wings of Desire, but right up there with
oh,
Wings of
okay.
Desire.
Yeah, right
Yes.
up there, anyways. But I think it's just because of how, like you said, like in the moment and present the movie is. Like it came out
Yes.
2 years ago, but it could have easily come out like yesterday.
Yeah.
And I think yeah, and it's not beholden to, any sort of standard um in film or Hollywood or whatever. It's completely its own experience. And I really I really love the character that they created for this movie because there's no possible way you can think that he's even like an actor playing a character. I feel like it's
Yeah.
so he plays somebody that's so just an everyday person, and you could change the context of where he is, what he does, and um who he speaks with, and everything, and you could still kind of have the same experience, like if you just
Yes.
depicted it the same way.
Yeah. So that's I love the central character too. And Dad and I talked more about the central character afterwards, which actually reminded me of something that you and I had talked about, which I think was not on recorded or captured last time. But I want to say this again because it's really important to me. So Dad, actually, we were talking about how you in Paris, Texas, you get a pretty clear idea about his past trauma because he tells his whole story at the very, very end of that movie, which is a pretty long movie. And in this one, you don't get as much of a backstory on what his past trauma is, but you do know that this is someone who is coming, he's established a life for himself, a way or to at least make peace with himself and his life and whatever past pain he had. Dad actually thought that he was an alcoholic and that he was a recovering alcoholic. He thought that that was alluded to when he was buying those beers to drink when he was so upset by what he saw in the bar. I actually don't know if I agree with that, but the thing that we talked about last time that I actually want to reiterate here is that I really like the idea, particularly in today's culture of people being so judgmental and cancel culture. I really like the idea that Vin Vendors is all about forgiveness, and his one of his central themes is about forgiveness. It's about um, not at all trying to lie or be dishonest about the fact that these characters, his central characters, have made mistakes. So it's very clear that, obviously Travis has made mistakes in Paris, Texas, and in this one, I don't know how his name is escaping me again. It's
Hirayama. Here,
Hiroyama.
yeah.
Hiroyama. He's also like made mistakes, but they've made peace with that somehow. Like it's all about how y when you go through something or when you make a serious mistake or when you completely fuck up your life, right?
Yeah.
There's a lot of collateral damage that happens. In Paris, Texas, it was the son, and being left behind and abandoned, and a broken marriage. And then in Perfect Days, it's the fact that he's clearly estranged from his family. His niece comes and seeks refuge with him, but she doesn't know him. She's only heard of him in the barest sense, but she said that it was always part of her plan to get to know him and to like take refuge with him whenever she felt like things were getting too conflicted with her mother, with her parent, and I don't know, it doesn't say anything about whether or not she has a dad. But anyway, what's so interesting to me is that I think that Vin Vendors is about reconciliation. It's about how does a person before it, I guess the message that I was taking away is that before you can begin to make up for all the collateral damage that your mistakes have caused other people, you first have to reconcile with yourself. You know what I mean? Like you first have to get straight with yourself. And I really love this idea. I love this idea because a lot of times it's almost it's that saying about people who you really have to know who you are before you can successfully be with other people and connect with people. And so I think that he shows that struggle and then that peace that can be achieved when you actually achieve that type of reconciliation. I think he shows that so beautifully. And in the case of Perfect Days, it is so appealing to me right now to see that life. I mean, there is something in both Dad and me that this movie and the way that this man has made peace with himself and his life and how he still has retained things that give him joy, like trees and beauty and like a beautiful day. There's something that's so appealing about that right now. It like speaks to this central yearning, and I think that it's almost like it's speaking to a illness that we're all feeling about that there's just way too much ugliness and hatred and conflict in this world, and there's way too many people who are behaving heedlessly and recklessly and wantingly without any regard. In fact, it's not even that they're setting out to reconcile in any kind of way or avoid collateral damage. There's like a bunch of people who are seeking to create as much collateral damage as possible against other human beings, And so I think that this movie is speaking to me right now because I want to know that there are more people like Hiroyama in the world, who have reconciled themselves to their state, their current life, and they have retained what gives them joy, and they're not hurting anybody. Do you know what I mean? They're just earning their living and living, and they're not hurting anybody. And so, if anything, they're just existing in a way that's bothering no one and hurting no one. And so I really love that. And this movie is sticking with me in a way that other movies that I've seen have not. Other movies that I've seen recently are just passing in and out of consciousness right now.
Yeah, I
So,
totally agree.
yeah,
And something you brought up with how dad reacted to the movie with saying like he thinks that Hirayama is like a recovering alcoholic, like that was a common that was something that was common with the rewatch when I showed my friends the movie because they also had their sort of like theories
theories.
about his backstory or why he how he's feeling about his life. Like um, you know, coming away, like they seem to, just say like, oh, he seems very sad. He seems very lonely. Um, or like, he is obviously is still dealing with so much trauma and all this stuff. Like,
Yeah, interesting.
and that could all be true or not, but I was reacting to that saying just like, okay, well, I think he's just content with his life. But that
Yes,
doesn't
I
that
felt that
doesn't
too.
that doesn't mean that, he doesn't have things he's upset about or, that are detracting from that sometimes, but like he seems very content. It's just his life, And
Yes,
I think it makes me think about movies that, have messages and themes and like things that they're stating outright. Um, and the value in kind of needing to state that or like or how you say that
right.
or even if it's that's even the point, like
Yes,
like sometimes.
I think I totally agree with where you're going with this. Yes.
So there are movies that really succeed in just like being just existing just as their own experiences, and some that really put forward a message that you want to carry with you to just as a reminder, not as
Yeah.
like a holistic this is gonna fix my life, right? I mean, Perfect Days in that sense um has that element of it that it's not meant to its experience is not meant to, be the biggest realization or epiphany. It's just it's so small and so grounded that like it makes it that much more impactful because it's just every day, you know.
Yes.
Um
Yeah.
like in my instance, or I mean for how it's affected me because I keep thinking about it, is mainly just uh because of how the movie shows so much of just everyday life and just doing nothing basically. Just showing that has made me when I'm doing anything that's sort of just my daily routine or just going somewhere, walking somewhere, um, doing an errand, all this stuff like it just makes me think like why am I not enjoying this? Or
Yeah.
like or why can't I just, enjoy this moment, as well as my other moments like with my friends or like watching a movie I like or like doing things I like why can't I have the same appreciation for things that are just kind of mundane or or normal.
Yeah.
And it makes me smile when I think like especially driving. I mean, I've always loved driving.
Yeah.
And this movie has also highlighted like how just kind of nice it is to just, be in your own space and listen to your music and think about life, however kind of uh heavy it might be or light.
Yes. I so feel that. And I am thinking about, so to restate what you just said, we both took away some really important influences and reminders and messages from this movie. And yet, some people might watch this movie and think there's nothing there, like
Yeah.
nothing happens. You know what I mean? Like people could make a Seinfeld like argument about this movie. Like nothing happens really. You just see this guy cleaning toilets and living his life. You know, there's little moments of drama, but that's it. Like there's barely any drama. And so, what is interesting to me is why this movie succeeded so well at sending its message or giving a message or a theme. And I think that you and I talked about this last time in terms of the patience that Vin Vendors has to let people draw their own messages from it or their own relevance from it. And he achieved the perfect distance between the movie and the audience. And I don't get how he did that. Like there are some movies where I am truly conscious. I truly feel the paint drying category that we talk about. I truly feel like I'm just watching like just the slowest thing ever. And I have no idea what the point of this is, and I have no idea what these characters are doing or like what I'm supposed to be taking away from this scene. So there are movies like that, and then there are movies that beat you over the head with their messages. So last time I made fun of Spielberg because of his like emotional manipulation of audiences, but it's also like it's recent movies like whatever it's like like a Barbie type message, like this is all about feminism, or this is all about the patriarchy, or something that's like really in your face about the message. And so I think that I wanted to sort of think, and I also wanted to see what you thought in editing and the pacing of Perfect Days, how it cut between different scenes, and you still felt this forward motion of the action, like you were definitely following him through his days to the point where you got to expect like where he was going next, like oh he's riding his bike across the bridge, oh it's time for his lunch and he's eating in the park or whatever. But I think it also had something to do with how the movie was edited, put together, so like there would be these tiny little interruptions in his daily routine, like stopping to do the tic-tac-toe game. And so, how can I say this? He had an exquisite sense of, I'm not going to stay too long on this. I'm not gonna beat it home that he's taking delight in this very random interaction with somebody who's leaving him a tic-tac-toe game, And so, but at the same time, you still felt invested. That's the thing. And then after I saw Perfect Days, and ever since I've seen Perfect Days, I find myself like when I'm walking Jack, I just find myself like looking at the sky. I always do this anyway, but I look at the sky, I look at the trees, I look at the flowers that are coming out now that it's springtime, and I think to myself, that movie made me realize how grateful I am that I can still appreciate beauty. Because I have so many days of feeling shitty about what's happening in the world. Like my latest thing, I mean, I think that Trump started me on thinking about how shitty one could feel about the world and about what's happening in the world. Like, I never thought that I could reach these depths of feeling this shitty. And so it started with like the whole how they were treating families at the border. And then my latest thing is I cannot believe that students are being snatched off the streets, like kidnapped off the streets, and I can't believe that. I can't believe that you come to an American university on a really valid visa and you write an op-ed, about that you support, that you're against the war in Gaza, and then all of a sudden that gives somebody the right to come and just disappear you and send you to fucking Louisiana in a detention facility while everybody's frantically trying to figure out what you are. I mean, it's literally like we are a developing country with a out of control military that's just snatching people off the streets. And so I I live for all the moments that I don't feel shitty. I am looking for people to, I'm looking for people and for art to inspire me that there are still good things in this world, And Hiroyama lives this life that so many people would look at with total contempt. They would be like, "Oh, she's a janitor." You know what I mean? Like he's a janitor. He cleans toilets. He's the lowest of the low. He lives in what's considered to be like a slum almost or a working class neighborhood of Tokyo. His apartment is the opposite of fancy. And yet I could make an argument that he has so much in his life, that because he loves books, reading, and he loves music, and he loves trees, and to just look at trees at during lunch hour, I would argue that he is a very, very fulfilled man and character. And I think that's incredible. I think that that is an incredible achievement for a movie. I really, really do.
I'd be,
That was a rant.
yeah, all good.
That was a soliloquy.
That's why else are we here? I I would be so curious to see what the script of this movie looked like.
Yes, me too.
Um, is it just like Hirayama cleans toilet, or is it like Hirayama scrubs scrubs the toilet, scrubs every surface of it, like holds the mirror up to the bottom of it to see if he missed any spots. Like,
Yes.
how in depth is it?
I was
I
kind of
think,
inspired by that, by the way. I was like thinking, what
okay,
mirror could I use to get this
yeah,
picture when I'm
true.
cleaning my toilet?
Yeah, I like think I would imagine that it's outlined that he deeply cleans, but that it's more expanded upon how he does that on set and with the incredible work of the incredible technical work of the movie because there's Hirayama who very like in his actions it just like looks like he's cleaned this a million times,
Yeah,
and he
yeah.
knows his routine. And then like production designers who give him all the equipment and then the costume who give him, his
A
iconic now
coverall, yeah.
yeah, janitor
Coverall, yeah.
yeah, coverall, okay. And then the editors who decide that we don't need to see everything, but
Right.
we do need to see this specifically because this
Yes.
this says something about his character, or this
And
says
how
something about,
long?
and yeah, and
How
how
long they
long.
decide, that you and
Right.
wait and how you cut to like a cleaning toilet versus him just discovering the paper. Like how long do we spend on that?
Yeah. And then something I noticed this time around, I mean, I know last time I noticed how, there was no score and the only music was the music he would play in his car.
Yeah.
And that kind of, so you still enjoyed music, but you were more enthralled with just the sounds of everyday life, which this time around, the sound design I noticed way more because like
Oh, you did.
when he would step out, to let somebody go use the bathroom,
Hmm.
um, and he would look up at the sky, like sometimes things would the sound would zone in on like a specific sound, and like some other sounds would not disappear, but they would
Yeah.
like be toned down a little bit so that we could just hear the leaves, or
Yeah.
like we could hear just like, or it would just be a little quieter, which sometimes that's how it feels like when you're zoning out or when you're like um meditative in that way. And
Yeah.
I think that's a really genius way they kind of captured that feeling. And then a bold choice of like the dream sequences being silent. Like
Yes.
I
I
think
was
the
just gonna
fact
say that.
that
Yeah.
like dreams don't really have sound. You know, when we
Hmm.
dream, like we don't. It's not like we're filling in what we understand about it, but we're not actually hearing it because living is everything. It's you see and you hear and feel. But dreams themselves, they're just like kind of fading images, which is like, and the ones that were captured in this movie were very compelling. And just
Yes.
made you kind of reflect on like the day. And also some of them I realized on the rewatch kind of forecasted some of the some things, that were coming. So it showed that, these were always kind of these experiences or people specifically, because sometimes people would show up. They were always with him.
So we talked about this many times, but in terms of getting the elements of the story right, like a story of the elements of all the ingredients of a film and all the things that have to line up. And so I think that Wim Wenders has worked with the same cinematographer throughout all of his movies. And clearly somebody, I don't know his name, but just he or she is very, very talented, like super, super talented because his movies look beautiful. They look so beautiful. And they make really humble, sometimes decaying spaces look really beautiful. So there's a way that you could shoot that section of Tokyo, which is clearly a working class neighborhood, as being sort of urban and dirty, or not dirty because Tokyo is never dirty, but like urban and gritty
Well,
and
it
sort
could
of
be dirty.
crowded. But you know what I mean? But instead you find like beauty in these like really crowded urban, humble spaces, and Paris, Texas was shot so beautifully that in the middle of the desert, in these like broken down towns, in the middle of the desert, it still looked beautiful. Like even the old signs looked really, really beautiful. So I think that with Vin Vendors, I think he has a gift for bringing together sound, story, editing, and then actors all together. They're all used with, it's how can I say, he doesn't use the most complicated of ingredients. There's not like a million balls in the air going on. It's just done so perfectly. Like each element is done so perfectly. And I just want to give one example of when I noticed that it was not done well. I was just super annoyed by this, but Dad and I watched A Real Pain last night, and that soundtrack is entirely, the score is entirely Chopin, the classical composer Chopin and his nocturnes. Nocturnes is I forget what language it is, but it's meant to be night music. There's supposed to be night compositions, evening compositions. There's supposed to be music that you listen to in the evening. So you get these very dreamy, meditative piano nocturnes, these piano pieces that are played throughout. And I was so freaking annoyed by I was so annoyed by them. I mean, some of the time, like part of the time, I felt like they suited what was happening in the movie, but part of the time, I felt that they were just being used in such a heavy-handed, emotional signifier type of way. Like, even though we're milking this plot and this situation for comedy, like even though we're like finding these comic moments between these two cousins, we're just going to keep on like hammering in the nocturne, like, to show that actually there's so much tragedy and there's so much sorrow. So I guess I mean, I kind of have a tendency to hate on Jesse Eisenberg anyway, but I kind of felt like Jesse Eisenberg didn't always know what he was doing when he was using that music. Like, I was just like, I just don't think that sometimes it was used effectively and sometimes it just felt really obtrusive and I just wanted to scream at the movie. That could have been because I was in a heightened state of annoyance about the movie itself. Like, I found that movie intensely annoying, but that's just a whole nother discussion another day. But I feel like Wim Wenders gives me glimpses of beauty and hope without pretending that he doesn't pretend that there aren't broken people, that there aren't like sort of bad things that happen to people. He is very honest about the fact that there are struggles, that there's a human struggle, and that there's that human beings struggle and experience challenges and great trials in their life. But I feel like he is constantly sending a message that there's always a path for reconciliation and also for salvage, that you can salvage something out of your life that is worth living for. And I think that that's a really beautiful message. And I love him. I want to meet him. Although I bet that being German, he might not be that personable in real life. So,
Who knows?
Germans are known for being quite gloomy and blunt in real life. So anyway, is there anything else we wanted to say about the movie? Like just I think we talked a lot about the acting, especially of the central character Hiroyama, who was just brilliant. But I think actually all the actors were really amazing, just amazing. I actually in rewatching it with you and Dad, I was sort of cracking up at the niece, his niece, because she was just like so matter of fact and sort of goofy, like, "Hey, can I read this book?" Like, "Hey, no, yeah, no, I'm gonna be longer than 20 minutes." No, like, it was like, okay, whatever.
Hmm. I added some songs to my playlist after this rewatch.
Hmm.
Some really good music. I
Oh,
definitely
you know
want
what's so fun? Oh,
I want to
related
get
to that.
more. I was just gonna I just want more cassette tapes now because I think they sound a little different than CDs.
So Dad has been humming "Perfect Days." And that song is such a perfect day, that song. And he has been humming that song whenever he's been doing it a little bit unconsciously, um, when he's been feeling sort of happy or content, more content with something that just happened. So yesterday we went out for breakfast to Los Gatos, which we had never been to before. And we went to a breakfast restaurant that I had read about and I wanted to try. And I had spent some time in Los Gatos, but Dad had never spent any time in Los Gatos. And when we got there a little after 9 o'clock yesterday morning, it was a really, really beautiful morning. It was cool and blue, blue skies. And Los Gatos is surrounded by mountains, so you feel much closer to the mountains. And then we had a really good breakfast. There were people with dogs everywhere, and they were all like really happy to say hi to Jack. And we were just strolling along. We were strolling around Los Gatos for a good hour, and it was just so beautiful. Like it was such a beautiful day, and Dad was so happy with the waffle that he had just had. And so later on, when he was saying that he just really enjoyed his waffle and he really liked the town, he was starting to hum "A Perfect Days" kind of unconsciously, and that is the thing, I think, the music and the tone of that movie and the point of that movie. It's like if you can survive the awful times that we're living in, if you can just remember how to see beauty, if you can remember how to appreciate the moment that you're in. And I've actually always thought, Eric, if I may get personal for a second, I've actually always thought that this is one way that you and I are most alike, you know? It's like a micro view of half empty, glass half empty versus glass half full. Even like when you were little, you always got so excited by just a moment of something. Like you were excited if you had something really good to eat, or you were excited if you saw a really good movie, or you were excited if you saw, like, we took you to the circus and you love the horses or the lions or whatever. And so everything was just so delightful to you about these present moments. And that is a real gift. I know it doesn't feel like that when you're going through moments of stress, but it's a huge gift to be able to live in the moment and to take these small moments of happiness rather than always chasing after something that you don't have. You know what I mean? So you could be like the kind of person like, oh, I want to be in a perfect relationship right now, or I want to go on the best trip ever, or I want to have this kind of experience, or whatever. You could be chasing those experiences, and some people succeed in living that type of life and chasing adventure or chasing happiness or they think that getting a bigger car would make them happier, or getting plastic surgery would make them feel better about their lives. But in so many ways, it is a gift to be able to appreciate what you have. It is such a gift. And that is what this movie is about. It is a gift to be able to, he still, no matter what he's been through, he can appreciate a really good meal when the waiter is friendly to him or jokes with him. Everything like it just, and I actually think that when he and that other guy, that rando guy, were playing shadow tag, I think that that's showing, be open to the moment, be open and embrace the moment, because you never know what will lie around the corner.
Yeah. And
Anyway,
it was very validating for people who have specific hobbies or things that they like to do.
yeah.
I'm remembering how he would take film photos with his camera and then just like get them back, and if he didn't like them, he would just rip them up and then just
Yes.
and he would only keep the ones he liked in a little tin. And it didn't seem
Yes.
like he used them for anything. He just like wanted to save them because
Yes.
he thought they looked nice. I think sometimes people, when they discover these sorts of things about other people, suddenly want to make it like something different. Like, oh,
Yes.
you should post this, or you should like
Exactly.
make this your enterprise, or like I guess that's like a hyper capitalist mentality, but it's like why can't you just be like, oh, that's cool,
I know.
So makes me think like I just need to be satisfied with things I like to do and in the way I like to do them because that's
Yes.
perfectly fine.
Yes, that's exactly right. It's not only perfectly fine, but you're living life on your own terms. And
Yeah,
so, what does it mean to live life on your own terms? I mean, living life on your own terms means that you are the one who is, it's not about controlling your destiny. It's more that you can still derive happiness and contentment even from the most minor of things. And that's a
yeah,
huge gift to not be able to, because sometimes when people get into really dark places, especially people who are like, really, really struggle with depression, they can't see that. They can't see that beauty. One of my really good friends, the one who ended his own life, many years ago, like several years ago, I wasn't able to go to his memorial service, but his brother told this heartbreaking story about how he and his brother, before he passed away, they were on this canoe trip together. And it was the most incredibly beautiful fall day, and they were canoeing down a river together. And the fall leaves were so brilliant, and it was such a gorgeous day, and there was no sound other than the sound of their canoe. And they stopped paddling for a second, and the his brother said to my friend, he said, I can't believe how gorgeous this is, like how incredibly lucky we are to have a day like this for our canoe trip. And Andy said, I can't see this. I don't see this and I don't feel it in my heart. Like I can't see anything around me and I can't because the depression was like a cup that came down over him and just shut out all other influences. He just couldn't see it. And so Hiroyama is there's so many people would think, well, he should be traumatized, he's depressed, he's this, he's that. But at the same time, I see him and I think I see that that is a man who is living a very rich and beautiful life. Like he is set up as a character to be envied, and that is a really beautiful thing.
I remember that story because I now think of that story whenever I think about depression and like how
Hmm.
debilitating it is for people.
Yes.
Um, and you know, I, similar to that, watching this movie with my friends, they also like one of them was like, is anybody predicting like a suicide? Like in the middle of the movie, he said that.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
I never
and
thought that for a second.
right, neither did I, but I could see that. But the reason I think it wasn't giving that at all was because of his performance, was because you saw moments where he genuinely appreciated and beauty
Yes.
and genuinely, I mean, it was so simple. He just walked out of his door and he would look up and just and smile because it was another day. And sometimes he wouldn't do that, there was a
Yeah.
couple times where he didn't do that, and I we would notice, but there was usually not a moment in a day that he didn't stop and just appreciate something about it.
That actually just reminded me of something. Well, it's not a reminder because I actually haven't thought of this before. But we talked about that final scene where the actor is just listening to that final song and you see expression after expression chasing his face. And now that we've had this conversation, Eric, I think that the point of that it was just an extraordinarily well acted scene, because all you're looking at is a front shot of Hiroyama's face as he listens to this song. And what it makes me think is that that final scene is showing that it's not that Hirayama is cut off from his life or his feelings. It's not like he's incapable of feeling emotions or he's just decided to retreat from being, you know, e- even though he's very isolated and he's cut off from his family. during that scene, you see that he is still capable of feeling things and appreciating things because you see so many feelings chase across his face. You see sadness, you see joy, you see like so much like, melancholy on his face. But then you see like he has these moments where he's smiling with utter like delight, as he's listening to the song. And so I think that's another really interesting message, which is, you can stay human. You can retain all that you love about humanity and the best of yourself. And just because you have decided to retreat from some parts of life doesn't mean that you have stopped being fully human, And so that really makes me think of this final, what that final scene meant. But anyway, I really feel like that was an important movie. I feel like in some ways, been these really obscure little movies that no one has seen, like Thelma or, Perfect Days, that were it not for sort of a stray recommendation, you know what I mean? Like you just wouldn't know to see it, you know what I mean? So it does make me wonder how many other movies are like that, but I do think that Vin Vendors is a particularly consistent watch. I think that if I knew that he was coming out with a new film, a non-documentary, because I'm not super into documentaries. But I think if I heard that he was coming out with a new film, I think that I would really make an effort to see him, just so that I could stay in his world and his worldview, because it makes me feel better about life. So that
Yeah.
is my sort of final take on A Perfect Days.
Yeah, and those are the movies I tend to gravitate towards versus,
Yes,
things that make me feel dread or angst.
yes, yeah. But anyway, I'm glad we were able to re-record. I hope we have now patched together our non-continuity podcast episode.
No, yeah, definitely. We did.
And then next time around, anyway, well, we should end as we normally do, because we're going to patch it. But I love you, Eric. I'm really glad that you were willing to come back around and do this.
Love
And
you too. And we'll be right back in person actually for us to end this episode because we had some thoughts after this.
we did?
Yes. Oh my God, Mom, you I always think you have this airtight memory sometimes, but it's like, you know. No, but we'll come back in a second.
Okay. All right. I love you, Eric.
Love you too.
I thought I pushed this button. Okay.
Damn.
Eric and I just had a long conversation to finish off our conversation about perfect days, but I forgot to hit record when he came back from his break. So, but you know what? It was a great
Yeah,
conversation, and we don't need to recreate it.
we don't. I
We
don't
can
think
have a
so.
super short episode.
I guess I mean I have another question, another topic if you want to. I'm just curious because I don't I didn't know I only knew Wim Wenders' name, and I was like after this movie I was like, is he Japanese? What is it? What's going on? Is he a Japanese director? But I just searched up an image of him. He's some German dude,
Yeah, he's a
and
German dude. He's a renowned German
yeah,
filmmaker.
I'm wondering why I don't feel the sort of disconnect that we were talking about with Sean Baker's movies
Oh,
that in Perfect Days. Like why do I feel like it's so deeply personal
yeah, I don't
and
know.
lived in,
Yeah,
versus like Anora, which was it just didn't make it there. It was still obviously still enjoyable, but it didn't make it over the edge where I was it personally just affected me. Um and I don't know. I guess that's just kind of up to the intentions and the craft.
I think that when this interview that I read in The Guardian after he made Perfect Days, when he said, I just want to show all the different ways that I just want to show how life is,
Hmm.
what life is like lived. I think Anora was more about the plot,
Hmm.
about what happened,
Yeah.
and I don't think that Sean Baker was the right person to show the life. But I think that somehow Wim Wenders lets people tell their own story. How can I say this? Through the acting and the cinematography and the pacing, he somehow lets the life just breathe, like really, really breathe. And actually, for me, is what's interesting to you about like feeling connected with it and not disconnected from it. To me, the closest comparison to what Wim Wenders does so well and what other people try to do actually is when Alfonso Cuarón did Roma, and so Roma is a 3 hour black and white film, and it's really just a slice of life in this maid who lives in Mexico. She's a servant, and I did not feel that connected. I felt distant, like I felt that distance, the same distance I felt in Honora. But I think that Wim Wenders really somehow in the pacing and in the shots that he selects and in the acting too, the actors are extraordinary.
Yeah.
I think that somehow he lets you. I feel like he trusts us more.
Yeah.
I feel like he trusts us more to understand who these people are. And I feel like he says to us, be patient and just get to spend some time with these people, and then and then you will know or you'll at least get a glimpse of who they really are and who their
Hmm.
soul is. Does that make
Yeah.
sense? And so that patience, by the way, about like that trust in us to just understand and to connect to these people is exactly the opposite we talked about this in the Steven Spielberg episode.
Hmm.
I feel like Steven Spielberg with his goofy emotional motifs where I feel like he is trying to say, this is how you should feel about this person.
Yeah.
Whereas Wim Wenders is saying, I'm just going to show you how this person lives his or her life.
Yeah.
And then you're going to get a little bit of backstory and context. And then I'm going to trust you to develop your own relationship to this person.
That's a really that's a really great point. You know, I neglect to think about like how an audience is factored into the making of a movie
Yeah.
and how they're factored in. Um, and trust is a really great um word for it. But also, filmmakers who are trying to create works of art like are making it for themselves but also for other people, and however that syncs up is kind of what determines the outcome, so I think some filmmakers can make amazing films but can like be just too singularly focused,
Yes.
like I would say probably Nolan's movies are like
I was
that.
just thinking that. I was just thinking that. I
Yeah,
was thinking that like watching a Christopher Nolan film, by the way, is
yeah,
it's the opposite. It's not like he doesn't trust the audience. It's more like he decided to build this incredibly intricate Lego piece and he
yeah.
wants you to watch while he basically constructs the most elaborate Lego building ever. And you're supposed to watch this and go, "Oh, that's really
I
interesting.
mean,
Oh
it
my
is.
God,
I
that's amazing that you
No,
put in
that is amazing.
that."
That is, but you're
It
not
is amazing.
personally
Yeah, you're
like
not personally invested in it.
he's not making you feel like you were a part of that,
Right. Like,
and
yes.
sorry, and making the audience feel like they're a part of it. That's like a huge part of movies,
Yes.
and that's why going to the theater is really important because that's where you're the most immersed in a
Right.
movie.
That's right.
So,
So, like, for example, Inception, there's a central theme about grief and loss. His wife is lost to him. And then there's also a central theme about what level of reality he's on,
mhm,
like whether or not he's existing on the same plane, and that there's all these different dimensions. You're so caught up in trying to figure out what the hell is going on with the different
yeah,
layers and the plot and the intricacies and blah, 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 and the top spinning and all these little motifs, whatever, that you're sitting there going, I did not feel connected to his loss
yeah,
for his wife, for anything like that. I did not feel the grief or the sadness at
mm,
all. And I felt it so much more in Wim Wenders, the theme of loss and grief and mistakes, and tragedies in the past, that came through so much more powerfully.
yeah,
By the way, there's a place in the universe for both Nolan and Wim Wenders, but if I were to take like the one movie or two movies to desert islands, with me,
yeah,
I'd take probably Avengers Endgame, and I'd probably take a movie from like the Wim Wenders type of school
yeah.
of just a beautiful, perfect movie.
Again, huh?
Yeah.
Hmm,
Did I break out into a
a
little
little bit.
shininess? Yeah.
Um,
Okay. I'm getting a little shiny, and we're gonna end. And this is gonna be our shortest episode ever
I don't know.
because of
I
our
actually don't know
recording.
what this will total to, but I don't
No,
think
I
it.
mean we missed a good 15 minutes, so
Uh,
we have no more
yeah,
45 minutes of tape, but that's okay. At least we got it in, right?
yeah. I'm pretty sure you got like the context about the movie and stuff. Yeah,
Yes, we did
Perfect
the
Days.
plots. We did the plot synopses. We did the background leading
Oh,
up
we
to.
talked about the scene the with the ant.
I know we
Um,
talked about the scene. We talked about the scene, this one scene that I compared to this one scene in Drive My Car
yes.
because both of them were just so devastating and also so quiet.
Yeah.
Like it was what I would call quietly devastating.
Hmm.
And even just catching that scene on the second go around, I still felt that punch,
That
of
was a
it.
punch.
Oh, and also that last scene with Hiroyama and all the expressions on his face
Mm.
as he's listening to Nina Simone.
Yeah,
That's incredible. Vin Vendors said he makes the whole movie. Like picking that actor to play that part, he said he is the whole movie. And then I just tried to surround him with the right context, which is such
totally.
a beautiful way of seeing it.
Yeah.
And it's the same can be said of Harry Dean Stanton in Paris, Texas.
Yeah.
Harry Dean Stanton and the little boy who played his son, the entire movie revolves around those performances, and they're both masterful, just masterful.
Yeah.
But anyway, I'm really glad that you got to see both movies.
I'm glad you got me to watch him.
They were particularly welcome for me. I'm just struggling in this shit show right now of the news. And
Yeah.
yet, I love any type of content, movie or television show, or and I just listened to a great podcast, but I love people who are on this journey of uncovering and discovering and then also uncovering who we are as human beings, and not the worst parts of ourselves, but the parts that really try to overcome and try to learn from our mistakes, because that's
Yeah.
just not in evidence
Yeah.
right now.
One one comment that I saw one comment on Paris, Texas that somebody had a hard time kind of dealing with like the redemption of Travis in that story when you learn what actually happened.
Yeah,
And I think that's completely understandable, but the reality is that there are people that exist, that have gone through that and maybe much more horrible things or have done much more horrible things.
right,
And the question is like, how do you deal with that? You just like, kind of cast them aside, or do
right,
you like take them as they are? And as he is in the story, he's very, gentle and, caring and a loving person. He's obviously learned, but carries still all that trauma. I mean, even the fact that he couldn't physically be in the same room
right.
um, as his wife, like, was like telling enough, like that he understands exactly how horrible it was. But that's it. When you see that and understanding for that whole situation, like, I don't know, you can't just like cast it off.
Yeah, I think that his films tell you to actually view people with forgiveness and openness, to not judge. Oh, that's the other thing. His movies are not judgmental. They're not judgmental. They're not making a statement on the fact that Travis screwed up his life and his marriage. They're not making a judgment on the fact that this guy is a toilet cleaner. They are simply showing that they're living their lives as best as they can. So anyway, with that spirit in mind, I actually hope that you in your current stress and me in my current stress, I hope we can just continue to live life the best that we can, and to not try to not damage people around us. And that seems to be a really great theme to aspire to. But anyway, I'm glad you made it home. I know it was not ideal since you had to work, but I'm really glad I could feed you and that I'm sending you back
To be
with
fed.
food. And I love you, Eric,
Love you too. That
so
was
much.
such a great way to end.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you.
Yeah.
And hopefully I'll watch more Win Win Vin Vendors.
Yes. Thanks everybody for listening.
Yes.